Maya Rodriguez stepped off the military transport bus, her worn duffel bag slung over her shoulder as the scorching Texas sun beat down on Fort Benning. The other recruits around her chattered nervously, some boasting about their high school football achievements or their reasons for joining the army. Maya remained silent, pulling her long sleeves down to cover the intricate web of scars that decorated her arms like a roadmap of survival. At 22, she was older than most of the fresh-faced 18-year-olds surrounding her. While they had spent their recent years in classrooms and, at weekend parties, Maya had been living a different kind of life entirely. The kind that left permanent marks, both visible and invisible. The kind that taught lessons no textbook could ever contain. The drill sergeant's voice boomed across the formation area as the new recruits assembled. Sergeant Williams was exactly what Maya had expected: broad-shouldered, intimidating, with a voice that could shatter glass. His eyes swept across the group like a predator assessing prey, looking for weakness, for the ones who would break under pressure. "Welcome to hell, maggots," Williams bellowed, spittle flying from his mouth. "For the next 16 weeks, your pathetic civilian lives are over. You belong to me now, and I'm going to turn you from worthless pieces of garbage into something that might, if you're lucky, resemble a soldier." Maya stood at attention, her posture perfect despite never having military training. Years of hypervigilance had taught her to read situations quickly, to blend in when necessary, and to always be ready for whatever came next. She watched as some recruits shifted nervously, while others tried to puff out their chests in false bravado. The dormitory assignment process was a chaotic shuffle of names and bunk numbers. Maya found herself assigned to Bay 3, Bunk 14, a lower bunk near the back corner. Perfect for someone who preferred to observe rather than be observed. She began unpacking her minimal belongings, each item carefully chosen for its utility and lack of sentimental value. That's when she first encountered Jessica Chen and Marcus Thompson, two recruits who had apparently appointed themselves as the unofficial social directors of their bay. Jessica was a petite blonde from California whose father was a retired colonel, while Marcus was a stocky kid from Chicago who never stopped talking about his plans to become a Green Beret. "Hey, you," Jessica called out to Maya, her voice carrying that particular tone of someone accustomed to being the center of attention. "What's your story? You're older than most of us here." Maya looked up from folding her clothes, meeting Jessica's curious gaze with steady eyes. "Just here to serve," she replied simply, returning to her task. Marcus laughed, a sound that had an edge to it. "Come on, we're all sharing our backgrounds. Jessica's dad was a colonel, I played varsity football, Tommy over there was class president. What about you?" The attention of nearby bunks had turned toward them now. Maya could feel the weight of curious stares, the expectation that she would participate in this impromptu sharing session. She had become skilled at deflecting such questions over the years. "Nothing special," Maya said, closing her footlocker with a quiet click. "Just ready to do my part." It was during the first week's medical examinations that the scars became impossible to hide. The base hospital was a sterile, efficient place where privacy was a luxury none of them could afford. As Maya changed into the examination gown, the fluorescent lights revealed what her long sleeves had concealed. The scars were extensive, thin lines across her forearms, circular marks that looked suspiciously like cigarette burns, and longer, more jagged marks that spoke of deeper violence. They told a story written in scar tissue, a narrative of survival that most people couldn't begin to comprehend. Dr. Patricia Hernandez, the examining physician, paused when she saw them. Her professional demeanor remained intact, but Maya caught the slight widening of her eyes, the way her pen hesitated over the medical forms. "These scars," Dr. Hernandez said quietly, "are you comfortable discussing how you acquired them?" Maya had rehearsed this conversation in her mind countless times. The truth was complex, dangerous, and would raise questions she wasn't prepared to answer. "Childhood accident," she said, the lie rolling off her tongue with practiced ease. "House fire." Dr. Hernandez nodded, making a note in her file. Maya could tell the doctor didn't entirely believe her, the scars were too varied, too deliberately placed to be from a single accident. But military doctors saw all kinds of backgrounds, and asking too many questions wasn't always wise. Unfortunately, Jessica Chen had been in the next examination room and had caught a glimpse of Maya's arms through the partially open curtain. By evening chow, whispers had begun circulating through their training company. The dining hall at Fort Benning was a cacophony of clattering trays, shouted conversations, and the constant underlying tension of exhausted, stressed recruits trying to refuel for another day of training. Maya sat with her usual group, quiet recruits like herself who preferred to eat quickly and avoid drawing attention. But attention found her anyway. So Rodriguez, Jessica's voice carried across the table, loud enough for nearby recruits to hear. "What's with all the scars? You look like you got in a fight with a lawnmower." The conversation at neighboring tables began to quiet as recruits tuned in to what was clearly developing into drama. Maya continued eating her meatloaf, not acknowledging the question. Marcus joined in with a laugh. "Maybe she's one of those goth kids who used to cut herself. You know, all that dramatic teenage angst stuff." Maya's fork paused halfway to her mouth. She could feel the weight of stares from around the dining hall, could sense the predatory excitement that came when a group identified someone they perceived as different, as vulnerable. "Or maybe," said another voice, David Kumar, a recruit from Jessica's hometown who clearly wanted to impress her, "she's just some street rat who got into a bunch of fights. Probably why she's here instead of college like the rest of us." The assumption stung, not because it was entirely wrong, but because it was so reductive. Maya had been to college, had earned a degree in international relations while working 3 jobs and hiding in safe houses. She had languages they'd never heard of, survival skills they couldn't imagine, and experiences that would give them nightmares. But explaining any of that was impossible. Maya finished her meal in silence, cleaned her tray, and walked out of the dining hall with her head held high. She could hear the whispered conversations resuming behind her, could feel their eyes following her movement. She had become the mystery they wanted to solve, the outsider they needed to categorize and, ultimately, to diminish. Back in the dormitory, the teasing continued in smaller, more vicious doses. Someone had drawn crude pictures on her footlocker, stick figures with exaggerated scars. Her bunk had been short-sheeted, her uniforms mysteriously went missing from the laundry, and, during the rare moments of downtime, conversations would halt when she entered a room. Maya endured it all with the patience of someone who had survived far worse. This was psychological warfare conducted by amateurs compared to what she had experienced in her previous life. But it was still wearing, still a constant reminder that even here, in a place where she had hoped to find belonging, she remained an outsider. The physical training was where Maya began to stand out in ways that confused her tormentors. While other recruits struggled with the daily runs, she moved with an efficiency that suggested training far beyond typical civilian fitness. During obstacle courses, she navigated barriers with a fluid grace that spoke of muscle memory developed under very different circumstances. Sergeant Williams noticed, of course. Drill sergeants missed nothing, and Maya's performance was beginning to create its own kind of attention. She was consistently in the top 5 performers in every physical challenge, but she did it without the bravado or competition that typically drove such achievement. "Rodriguez!" Williams barked during a particularly challenging rope climb exercise. "Where'd you learn to move like that?" Maya descended the rope with controlled precision, landing softly despite the 30-foot drop. "Just staying in shape, drill sergeant," she replied. Williams studied her with eyes that had seen decades of recruits. Something about her movement patterns, her situational awareness, her complete lack of fear during exercises that terrified other recruits, it all suggested a background he couldn't quite place. The harassment from her fellow recruits intensified as Maya's competence became impossible to ignore. Jessica, in particular, seemed to take Maya's success as a personal affront. During equipment cleaning sessions, she would make loud comments about how some people probably learned their skills in juvenile detention centers or street gangs. "I mean, look at those scars," Jessica said one evening while cleaning her rifle, her voice pitched to carry throughout the bay. "Normal people don't get marked up like that unless they're into some really dark stuff." Marcus nodded along eagerly. "My cousin's a cop, and he says most people with scars like that are either criminals or addicts. Sometimes both." Maya continued field stripping her weapon with mechanical precision, each movement economical and expert. She had learned long ago that responding to such provocations only escalated them. But, inside, she felt the familiar tension that came with being hunted, even in this relatively benign way. The breaking point came during the third week, during a night navigation exercise in the Georgia wilderness. The recruits had been divided into small teams and given coordinates to find in complete darkness, using only compasses and basic navigation skills. It was designed to be challenging, to push them beyond their comfort zones and teach them to work together under stress. Maya found herself paired with Jessica, Marcus, and 2 other recruits who had absorbed the general hostility toward her. The exercise should have taken 3 hours. Instead, it became a nightmare of deliberate sabotage and psychological torture. "Maybe our freak should lead," Jessica suggested with false sweetness as they stood at the starting point. "She probably knows these woods better than the rest of us. Probably been hiding out here from the law or something." The group laughed, but Maya simply checked her compass and began walking toward their first checkpoint. Navigation was indeed something she excelled at. Years of moving through unfamiliar territory and hostile environments had made reading terrain as natural as breathing. But her teammates had other plans. Every few hundred yards, they would deliberately make noise to compromise their stealth requirements. They would question her navigation choices loudly enough to alert any evaluating instructors to dissent within the team. When Maya found shortcuts that would save time and energy, they would refuse to follow, forcing longer, more difficult routes. "Are you sure you know where you're going, Scarface?" Marcus whispered harshly as they struggled through thick underbrush that could have been avoided. "Because if you get us lost, we're all going to fail because of your weird background." Maya pressed forward, her jaw tight but her navigation unwavering. She had endured far worse than teenage bullying conducted in the dark woods of Georgia. But the constant pressure, the deliberate sabotage of what should have been a team effort, and the casual cruelty of people who thought they understood her story, it all combined into a weight that even her considerable experience struggled to bear. They reached their final checkpoint just as dawn was breaking, exhausted and covered in mud. The exercise had taken twice as long as necessary due to the deliberate obstacles her teammates had created. As they stumbled back toward base camp, Maya realized that this pattern would continue throughout her training unless something fundamental changed. She had survived human trafficking rings, had escaped situations that would have broken most people, had rebuilt her identity from scratch more than once. But she had never had to do it while pretending to be someone she wasn't, while hiding the very experiences that had made her capable of succeeding in this environment. As they reached the base and prepared for debriefing, Maya made a decision that would change everything. She would continue to endure the harassment, continue to excel despite the sabotage, and wait for the right moment to reveal just enough of the truth to change the dynamic. Because somewhere in her past, a past she couldn't fully explain to anyone, she had learned that survival wasn't just about enduring pain. Sometimes, it was about strategic patience. The harassment escalated after the night navigation exercise. Word had spread beyond their immediate bay that Maya Rodriguez was somehow different, marked by scars and possessing skills that didn't match her claimed background. The dining hall became a gauntlet of whispered comments and pointed stares. Training exercises turned into opportunities for subtle sabotage disguised as accidents or confusion. Maya's response remained the same: silent endurance paired with flawless performance. She excelled at every physical challenge, mastered every technical skill, and demonstrated a level of tactical thinking that impressed even the most demanding instructors. But her very competence seemed to fuel her tormentors' determination to break her. The 6th week brought urban warfare training, a complex exercise conducted in a mock city built specifically for military education. Buildings filled with hidden threats, civilian targets mixed with enemy combatants, and scenarios designed to test decision-making under extreme pressure. Most recruits found the exercise overwhelming, their civilian backgrounds providing no framework for the split-second judgments required. Maya moved through the training environment like she had been born to it. Her situational awareness was extraordinary. She identified threats before other recruits even realized danger existed. During building clearing exercises, she demonstrated room entry techniques that were textbook perfect despite never having been taught them. Her weapon handling was fluid and confident, her tactical movement economical and precise. Sergeant Williams watched from the observation tower, his weathered face creased in concentration. Beside him stood Captain Rodriguez, no relation to Maya, despite the shared surname, who had been assigned to evaluate the training company's progress. "That recruit there," Williams said, pointing to Maya as she successfully negotiated a hostage scenario that had stumped 3 previous teams. Rodriguez. Something's not right about her background. Captain Rodriguez lowered his binoculars. Not right how? She moves like someone with serious training. Real training, not just civilian fitness or high school JROTC. Watch her weapon handling, her tactical awareness, the way she reads situations. Williams paused as Maya successfully identified and neutralized 3 hidden threats while protecting civilian targets. That's not natural talent. That's muscle memory from extensive field experience. The captain observed Maya for several more scenarios, his interest clearly piqued. Maya's performance was indeed exceptional, but it was the subtle details that caught his attention, the way she checked corners, her instinctive positioning for maximum tactical advantage, her ability to process complex threatening environments with calm efficiency. Have you reviewed her background file? Captain Rodriguez asked. Williams nodded grimly. Civilian from Phoenix, supposedly. No military experience, no law enforcement background, no special training listed. But, watch her move. That's not civilian movement. Down in the training area, Maya was unaware of the scrutiny from above. She was focused on completing the current scenario, a complex situation involving multiple hostile positions and innocent bystanders. Her teammates for this exercise were the same group that had been tormenting her, and they were making their usual attempts at sabotage. Hey Rodriguez, Marcus called out as they prepared to enter a building filled with unknown threats. Why don't you go first? You seem to know what you're doing. Probably because you've been in situations like this before, right? The comment was meant to be mocking, another reference to her presumed criminal background. But Jessica picked up on something different in Marcus's tone, a hint of genuine nervousness about the upcoming exercise. Actually, Jessica said with false sweetness, maybe she should go first. Let her use whatever sketchy skills got her those scars. Might be useful for something other than freaking people out. Maya checked her training weapon one final time and moved toward the building entrance. She could handle the mockery, but she couldn't allow their sabotage to compromise the mission objectives. These exercises were graded, and failure would affect her entire training record. The building interior was a maze of rooms and corridors, each potentially containing threats or civilians to be protected. Maya moved with calculated precision, using proper tactical movement to clear each space systematically. Behind her, her teammates attempted to follow, but their civilian backgrounds made them clumsy and loud. How does she know to do that? David Kumar whispered to Marcus as Maya expertly cleared a doorway using techniques they had never been taught. Probably learned it in prison, Marcus whispered back, but his voice carried less conviction than usual. Maya's movements were too professional, too polished to be the result of street experience. The scenario climaxed in a large room where multiple threats were positioned among civilian targets. Most recruit teams struggled with this challenge, often failing to identify all threats or accidentally engaging innocent targets. Maya assessed the situation in seconds, identified threat priorities, and began engaging targets with precise, controlled fire. Her accuracy was devastating. Every shot found its mark, every movement served a tactical purpose. She neutralized all threats while protecting every civilian target, completing the exercise with a score that would stand as the company record. The silence from her teammates was deafening. As they exited the training building, Sergeant Williams was waiting with an expression Maya couldn't read. His usual aggressive demeanor had been replaced by something approaching professional respect. Rodriguez, Williams said, report to Captain Rodriguez's office at 1400 hours. Maya's blood chilled. Special meetings with officers usually meant one of two things: extraordinary recognition or serious trouble. Given her desire to remain unnoticed, neither option appealed to her. Yes, drill sergeant, she replied, maintaining perfect military bearing despite her internal alarm. The rest of the day passed in a haze of speculation and anxiety. Her tormentors seemed to sense that something significant was developing, and their harassment took on an almost gleeful quality. Jessica made loud predictions about Maya finally being exposed as whatever she was hiding. Marcus speculated about criminal background checks finally catching up with her. Captain Rodriguez's office was spartanly decorated with the functional efficiency typical of career military officers. Combat deployment photos, commendation certificates, and unit insignia covered one wall. A bookshelf held military manuals, tactical guides, and what appeared to be several books on intelligence operations. Maya knocked on the open doorframe and entered when beckoned, maintaining perfect posture and military courtesy. "Recruit Rodriguez reporting as ordered, sir." Captain Rodriguez gestured to a chair across from his desk. "Have a seat, Rodriguez. This is an informal conversation." Maya sat but remained at attention, her hands positioned correctly on her knees, her spine straight. Years of hiding her true background had taught her that informal conversations with authority figures were often the most dangerous. "Your performance in today's urban warfare exercise was exceptional," the captain began, studying Maya's face for reactions. "In fact, your overall performance has been consistently outstanding. Top 5% in physical fitness, perfect scores on technical knowledge, and tactical awareness that exceeds what we typically see from civilian recruits." Maya maintained neutral expression. "Thank you, sir. I'm committed to meeting all training standards." "That's just it, Rodriguez. You're not just meeting standards, you're exceeding them in ways that suggest prior training. Extensive prior training." Captain Rodriguez leaned back in his chair. "I've been in the Army for 15 years. I've seen recruits from all backgrounds, athletes, Eagle Scouts, JROTC standouts, even some with limited military experience from family members. But your skill set is different." The captain pulled out a file, presumably Maya's service record. "According to your paperwork, you're a civilian from Phoenix with no military background, no law enforcement experience, no special training of any kind. But I watched you clear that building today like someone with years of tactical experience." Maya's mind raced through possible responses. Denying the obvious was pointless, her performance spoke for itself. But explaining the truth was impossible without revealing information that would endanger not just herself, but potentially others. "I've always been interested in military tactics, sir," she said carefully. "I've read extensively about combat operations, watched training videos, studied tactical manuals." Captain Rodriguez smiled, but it wasn't a friendly expression. "Rodriguez, I've seen a lot of people who study military tactics as a hobby. They can recite procedures and explain concepts, but they can't execute them under pressure. What you did today wasn't theoretical knowledge, it was operational experience." The room fell silent except for the hum of the air conditioning system. Maya could feel the weight of the captain's scrutiny, the professional assessment of someone trained to identify deception. "Let me be more direct," Captain Rodriguez continued. "Your weapon handling, your movement patterns, your situational awareness, your tactical decision-making, these suggest someone with serious field experience. The kind of experience that typically comes from special operations training or extensive combat deployment." Maya maintained her neutral expression, but internally she was calculating options. How much could she reveal without compromising operational security? How little could she admit while still maintaining credibility? "Sir, I understand your concerns about my background, but I can assure you that I'm here for the same reasons as any other recruit, to serve my country and contribute to our military's mission." Captain Rodriguez studied her for a long moment, then opened another file on his desk. This one was different, thicker, with classification markings that made Maya's blood pressure spike. "Rodriguez, I'm going to ask you a direct question, and I need you to understand that how you answer it could significantly impact your military career." He paused, meeting her eyes directly. "Have you ever been involved in any classified operations or programs?" The question hit Maya like a physical blow. Captain Rodriguez wasn't just curious about her background, he was conducting what amounted to a security investigation. The classified file on his desk suggested that her previous life might not be as hidden as she had hoped. Maya's training kicked in. When faced with a direct question about classified matters, there were protocols to follow. The challenge was that those protocols assumed she was operating in an official capacity, not trying to hide her background while enlisting in the regular army. "Sir, I'm not sure I understand the question," she replied, falling back on the standard deflection technique for security-sensitive inquiries. Captain Rodriguez leaned forward, his expression becoming more intense. "Rodriguez, I'm going to share something with you that's not common knowledge. Before my current assignment, I spent 3 years as a liaison with Joint Special Operations Command. Part of my job was identifying individuals with special operations backgrounds who might be operating under cover identities." Maya felt her carefully constructed civilian facade beginning to crumble. JSOC liaisons were trained specifically to identify people like her operators who were supposed to remain invisible. "The thing about special operations personnel," the captain continued, "is that their training creates recognizable patterns. Movement signatures, decision-making processes, tactical responses that are impossible to completely suppress, no matter how hard someone tries to appear civilian." He opened the classified file and withdrew a single photograph. Maya's heart nearly stopped when she saw it, a grainy surveillance photo showing her in tactical gear, but with her face clearly visible. She recognized the location immediately, a compound in Southeast Asia where her old life had taken her 2 years earlier. This photograph was taken during Operation Silent Echo, a classified counter-trafficking mission conducted 18 months ago. The operation was successful, resulting in the liberation of 37 victims and the neutralization of a major trafficking network. Captain Rodriguez placed the photo directly in front of Maya. "The woman in this photograph bears a striking resemblance to you, Recruit Rodriguez." Maya stared at the photo, her mind working frantically to assess the situation. Operation Silent Echo had been one of her last missions before she extracted herself from that life. The operation had been successful, but it had also been the mission that convinced her she needed to find a different path before the violence consumed what remained of her humanity. "Sir, I can see the resemblance, but I think you're mistaken about the identity of the person in that photograph," Maya said, sticking to her cover despite the overwhelming evidence. Captain Rodriguez nodded as if he had expected that response. "The thing is, Rodriguez, we've run facial recognition analysis. The probability match is 97%. Combined with your demonstrated tactical skills and the timeline of your enlistment, it creates a very compelling case." He closed the file and leaned back in his chair. "Now, I need you to understand that I'm not here to expose you or compromise any ongoing operations. But I also can't ignore clear evidence that one of my recruits has a classified background that doesn't match her official records." Maya realized that her carefully planned new life was collapsing around her. The anonymity she had desperately sought, the chance to serve in a conventional capacity without the shadows of her past, was disappearing. But perhaps more concerning was what Captain Rodriguez's knowledge might mean for others who had been involved in her previous operations. "Sir, what exactly are you asking me to do?" Maya said, abandoning her previous deflections. "I'm asking you to tell me the truth about your background, so I can determine how to handle this situation appropriately." Captain Rodriguez's tone softened slightly. "Look, Rodriguez, if you're someone who's been involved in classified operations and you're trying to transition to conventional service, there are proper channels for that. But operating under a false identity within the military creates security risks that I can't ignore." Maya looked at the photograph one more time, seeing herself as she had been, armed, focused, operating in a world where violence was a daily reality and moral certainties were luxuries she couldn't afford. That person seemed like a stranger now, someone whose choices had led to this moment of reckoning. "Sir, if I were to hypothetically acknowledge involvement in classified operations, what would happen next?" Maya asked carefully. Captain Rodriguez smiled genuinely for the first time during their conversation. "That would depend on several factors. The nature of your previous service, whether you're operating with official sanction, and what your intentions are for your current military career." He pulled out a secure phone from his desk drawer. "But the first step would be verification through appropriate channels. If you're who I think you are, there are people who will want to have a very interesting conversation with you." The secure phone call took 43 minutes. Maya sat in Captain Rodriguez's office, listening to one side of a conversation conducted in military jargon and classification codes she recognized but wasn't supposed to. The captain's expression shifted several times during the call: surprise, concern, something that might have been respect, and, finally, a kind of grim understanding. When he hung up, the silence stretched between them like a chasm. "Well," Captain Rodriguez said finally, "that was enlightening." Maya waited, her hands still folded correctly in her lap, her posture still perfect. But, inside, her mind was preparing for multiple scenarios: exposure, extraction, reassignment, or worse. "It seems you've been cleared for disclosure of certain information," the captain continued. "Though I'm told that what I learned here doesn't leave this room without explicit authorization." He pulled out a different file, this one bearing classification markings Maya recognized from her previous life. Agent Maya Rodriguez, formerly of the Department of Defense Special Access Program known as Silent Echo. Specialized in counter-trafficking operations, hostage recovery, and what the file diplomatically calls direct action against high-value targets. Hearing her real designation spoken aloud after months of hiding felt like stepping into sunlight after years in a cave. Terrifying and liberating simultaneously. "Your service record is impressive," Captain Rodriguez said, scanning the documents. 17 successful operations across 4 continents. Credited with liberating over 200 trafficking victims and dismantling networks responsible for millions in illegal revenue. He looked up at her. "The people I spoke with used words like exceptional, fearless, and absolutely critical to mission success." Maya finally allowed herself to relax slightly, though years of operational security made complete relaxation impossible. "Sir, may I ask who you spoke with?" "Colonel Sarah Chen, JSOC Operations. She says to tell you that Phoenix misses their best asset." Captain Rodriguez smiled. "She also said, and I quote, Maya Rodriguez is one of the most effective operators we've ever had, and if she's decided to pursue conventional military service, the Army just got very lucky." The weight of maintaining her false identity began to lift from Maya's shoulders. For months, she had forced herself to hide the very experiences that had shaped her, to pretend incompetence in areas where she excelled, to endure mockery about capabilities she actually possessed. "Sir, what happens now?" Maya asked. "Now we have a conversation about what you want your military career to look like," Captain Rodriguez said. "Because according to Colonel Chen, you have several options." He spread out what appeared to be transfer paperwork. Option 1, immediate reassignment to Special Operations Command. Your previous experience would fast-track you through selection, and you'd be operational again within months. Maya studied the paperwork, recognizing the unit designations and training pipelines. It would be a return to her old life under official military auspices. Dangerous work, but work she was uniquely qualified for. Option 2, completion of basic training followed by assignment to military intelligence. Your operational experience would be invaluable in analysis and planning roles. Less direct action, but still utilizing your expertise. The intelligence option appealed to her desire for a more sustainable career path. Analysis and planning were skills she had developed extensively, and the work would be meaningful without the constant physical danger. Option 3, Captain Rodriguez continued, you continue basic training as planned, with the understanding that your background will be appropriately classified and protected. You pursue whatever military career path interests you, with your previous experience serving as an unofficial asset. Maya considered the options carefully. Each represented a different future, a different relationship with her past. But one question remained paramount. "Sir, what about the other recruits? The harassment, the speculation about my background?" Captain Rodriguez's expression darkened. "That brings us to another issue we need to address. The behavior you've been experiencing from your fellow recruits is unacceptable under any circumstances, but, given your actual background, it's particularly problematic." He pulled out another file, this one containing incident reports Maya didn't know existed. "We've been documenting the harassment. The drawings on your footlocker, the deliberate sabotage during training exercises, the constant verbal abuse. Under normal circumstances, this would result in disciplinary action for the perpetrators." Maya felt a surge of validation. The harassment had been documented, recognized as inappropriate regardless of her background. However, the captain continued, given the security sensitivities around your actual identity, we need to handle this carefully.
We can't reveal your background to justify disciplinary action without potentially compromising operational security. Maya understood the dilemma.
Her tormentors couldn't be told why their assumptions were wrong without revealing classified information.
But allowing the harassment to continue was equally problematic. What do you recommend, sir? Captain Rodriguez smiled, and this time it was definitely predatory.
I think it's time for a training exercise that might provide some educational opportunities for your fellow recruits.
Later that afternoon, Maya returned to her bay to find the usual suspects engaged in their typical activities.
Jessica was holding court near her bunk, regaling a small audience with theories about Maya's meeting with Captain Rodriguez. Marcus was nodding along, adding his own speculation about disciplinary action or possible expulsion.
I bet they finally
figured out what she's been hiding, Jessica said with satisfaction.
Probably kicked her out for lying on her enlistment papers.
Maya began preparing for the evening training session, ignoring the commentary around her. But she noticed Sergeant Williams entering the bay with an expression that suggested something unusual was about to happen.
"Listen up, maggots,"
Williams bellowed, and the bay immediately snapped to attention.
"Change of plans for tonight's training. We're doing a special exercise called Meet Your Instructors."
The recruits exchanged confused glances. This wasn't a standard training designation. You're going to be learning advanced tactical procedures from a guest instructor with extensive field experience, Williams continued. Someone who's actually been there and done that, not just read about it in manuals.
Jessica raised her hand. "Drill sergeant, who's the instructor?"
Williams smiled with the expression of someone about to deliver a perfectly timed surprise.
"Your instructor will be someone from your own company.
Someone who, it turns out, has considerably more experience than any of you realized." Maya felt every eye in the bay turn toward her, but their expressions were confused rather than understanding.
They still didn't comprehend what was happening. "Rodriguez," Williams said, "you're up." The silence in the bay was absolute.
Maya could see the confusion on her fellow recruits' faces as they tried to process what they were hearing.
She had been selected to instruct them? Maya, the scarred outsider they had been mocking for weeks?
"That's impossible," Jessica said, forgetting military protocol in her shock.
"She's just another recruit. She doesn't have any more experience than the rest of us."
Williams turned his attention to Jessica with an expression that could have melted steel.
"Recruit Chen, did I ask for your opinion about the qualifications of your instructor?"
"No, drill sergeant, but nothing."
Williams roared.
"You've been running your mouth for weeks about Rodriguez's background. Tonight you get to discover exactly how wrong your assumptions have been."
Maya stepped forward, feeling the weight of her fellow recruits' stares.
This wasn't how she had planned to reveal her capabilities, but it was an opportunity to address the harassment while demonstrating that their assumptions about her were completely incorrect. "The training tonight will focus on tactical movement in urban environments," Maya announced, her voice carrying the authority that came from actual experience.
"You'll be learning techniques used in real operations, not textbook theory." Marcus laughed nervously. "Come on, this is ridiculous. What does she know about real operations?"
Maya turned to face him directly, and something in her expression made him take a step backward.
"I know that hesitation gets people killed.
I know that assuming you understand a situation without proper assessment leads to mission failure. And I know that underestimating someone based on their appearance is one of the fastest ways to end up dead." The training area had been set up to simulate an urban environment, complete with multiple buildings, varied terrain, and hidden obstacles. Maya stood before the assembled recruits, noting their skeptical expressions and whispered comments. "Tonight you're going to learn how to move through hostile territory without getting killed," Maya began.
"The first lesson is that everything you think you know about tactical movement is probably wrong."
She gestured toward the mock buildings.
"Most of you have been moving through these exercises like you're playing a video game.
You make noise, you expose yourselves unnecessarily, and you fail to properly assess threats before advancing." Maya demonstrated proper tactical movement, flowing from cover to cover with an economy of motion that made it look effortless. Her positioning was perfect, her weapon handling flawless, her situational awareness comprehensive.
"Your turn," she said to Jessica. "Show me how you clear that doorway."
Jessica moved toward the building with the clumsy confidence of someone who had been performing adequately in previous exercises. But, compared to Maya's demonstration, her technique looked amateurish and dangerous.
"Stop," Maya called out.
You just exposed yourself to 3 different firing positions, made enough noise to alert anyone within 50 yards, and positioned yourself where you can't retreat if you encounter superior force.
Jessica's face flushed red. "I was doing it the way we were taught."
You were doing it the way beginners are taught, Maya corrected.
"Now let me show you how it's done when your life actually depends on it."
Maya repeated Jessica's approach, but, this time using proper tactical movement. The difference was dramatic. She remained concealed, moved silently, and maintained tactical advantage throughout the approach. The difference, Maya explained to the stunt group, is that I learned these techniques in situations where mistakes meant death, not just a poor grade on a training exercise. Marcus stepped forward, his skepticism still evident.
"Where exactly did you learn this stuff? Because last time I checked, you were just another civilian recruit like the rest of us." Maya looked at him steadily.
I learned it in places where asking too many questions about someone's background could get you killed. In situations where the only thing that mattered was whether you could do the job when lives were on the line. She turned to address the entire group. For weeks, you've been making assumptions about me based on my scars, based on your theories about my background. You've decided that because I don't fit your expectations of what a soldier should look like, I must be inferior or damaged or dangerous. The recruits shifted uncomfortably, recognizing the truth in her words.
"But, here's what you failed to understand," Maya continued.
These scars aren't signs of weakness or criminal behavior.
They're evidence of survival.
They represent situations where I had to endure violence, overcome impossible odds, and complete missions that others couldn't handle. She gestured toward the training area.
Every technique I'm teaching you tonight was learned in real operations.
Every movement pattern was developed under actual fire.
Every tactical principle was paid for with blood and validated by results."
David Kumar raised his hand tentatively.
"What kind of operations?" Maya considered how much she could reveal without violating security protocols.
The kind where failure meant innocent people died. The kind where hesitation meant missing the chance to save lives. The kind where your assumptions about people's capabilities could get your entire team killed. She demonstrated advanced tactical procedures that went far beyond basic training curriculum. Room clearing techniques that prioritized speed and accuracy. Communication methods that allowed for coordination without alerting enemies.
Movement patterns that maximized concealment while maintaining offensive capability.
With each demonstration, the recruit's skepticism transformed into something approaching awe. This wasn't theoretical knowledge or basic training competence, this was expertise developed through extensive real-world application. Now, Maya said, let's see if you can apply these techniques properly.
The training exercise that followed was transformative.
Maya pushed the recruits beyond their comfortable basic training procedures, teaching them to think tactically rather than just following prescribed movements. She corrected their mistakes with the patience of someone who understood that learning these skills properly could save their lives someday. Jessica struggled initially, her previous confidence shaken by the realization that her assumptions had been completely wrong. But, as Maya provided individual instruction, her performance improved dramatically. Better, Maya said as Jessica successfully negotiated a complex tactical scenario.
You're thinking about positioning now, not just following procedures.
Marcus approached Maya during a break between exercises.
Rodriguez, I owe you an apology. We all do. We were completely wrong about you.
Maya studied his face, looking for signs of sincerity versus social positioning.
The apology I need isn't for being wrong about my background.
It's for deciding that your assumptions justify treating me like garbage.
Marcus nodded, understanding the distinction.
You're right. Even if you had been exactly what we assumed, the way we treated you was inexcusable. As the training session concluded, Maya found herself surrounded by recruits who wanted to understand more about tactical procedures, ask questions about real-world applications, and acknowledge their previous behavior. But the most significant moment came when Sergeant Williams approached her as the group was preparing to return to barracks.
"Outstanding instruction, Rodriguez," he said.
"Some of the best tactical training I've seen at this level."
Maya nodded respectfully. "Thank you, Drill Sergeant."
Williams studied her for a moment. "You know, we still have 7 weeks of basic training left. If you're staying with us, I could use an assistant instructor for advanced tactical training." The offer represented recognition and opportunity, but also a fundamental change in her relationship with the other recruits. She would no longer be the mysterious outsider, she would be the expert whose background commanded respect rather than suspicion. "I'd be honored to assist, Drill Sergeant," Maya replied. The transformation in the company's dynamics was immediate and profound. Word spread quickly through the barracks that Maya Rodriguez wasn't just another recruit, she was someone with serious operational experience who had been teaching advanced tactics that went far beyond standard basic training curriculum. The whispered speculation that had previously centered on criminal backgrounds and mysterious scars shifted to awe and professional curiosity.
Maya found herself in an entirely new position within the military hierarchy.
No longer a regular recruit, but not quite an official instructor either. She occupied a unique space as someone whose expertise was acknowledged and utilized while she continued her own training progression. It was a delicate balance that required careful navigation.
The morning after her impromptu tactical instruction session, Maya arrived at formation to find a markedly different atmosphere.
The hostile stares had been replaced by respectful attention.
The whispered mockery had transformed into genuine interest in her background and capabilities.
Even Jessica Chen, who had been the most vocal critic of Maya's presence, now watched her with something approaching respect.
Sergeant Williams called Maya aside after morning inspection.
"Rodriguez, I've spoken with Captain Rodriguez and received authorization for a modified training schedule. You'll continue with standard basic training requirements, but you'll also be assisting with advanced tactical instruction for the entire company."
Maya nodded, understanding the implications.
This arrangement would allow her to contribute her expertise while maintaining the conventional military career path she had chosen. It was a compromise that honored both her previous experience and her current goals. Additionally, Williams continued, "We've received a special visitor request. Apparently, your reputation has reached higher levels of command."
That afternoon, Maya was summoned once again to Captain Rodriguez's office.
But this time, she wasn't alone. A woman in army dress uniform with colonel's insignia stood beside the captain's desk, her bearing suggesting both authority and extensive field experience. "Rodriguez," Captain Rodriguez said, "I'd like you to meet Colonel Sarah Chen, Joint Special Operations Command." Maya recognized the name from her previous life. Colonel Chen had been her handler for several operations, though they had never met face to face. The colonel was younger than Maya had expected, probably in her early 40s, with eyes that suggested she had seen considerable action herself.
"Agent Rodriguez," Colonel Chen said, extending her hand. "It's a pleasure to finally meet you in person. Your operational record with Silent Echo was exemplary."
Maya shook the colonel's hand, noting the firm grip and assessing gaze.
"Thank you, ma'am. Though I should mention that I'm pursuing conventional military service now." Colonel Chen smiled. "Yes, I'm aware of your career transition goals. That's actually why I'm here."
She gestured toward the chairs around Captain Rodriguez's desk. "The military is evolving, Rodriguez. We're recognizing that the skills developed in special operations have applications beyond direct action missions. Leadership, training, tactical innovation, these capabilities are valuable throughout the Army." Maya sat down, curious about where this conversation was heading. Her goal had been anonymity and conventional service, but it seemed her background was creating opportunities she hadn't anticipated. "We're launching a new program," Colonel Chen continued, "designed to integrate experienced special operations personnel into conventional units as tactical advisors and advanced training specialists. Think of it as a way to disseminate specialized knowledge throughout the broader military." Captain Rodriguez spread out several documents on his desk. The program would allow you to complete basic training, as you intended, but with additional responsibilities for tactical instruction and operational planning assistance. Maya examined the paperwork, noting the program designation and unit assignments. It appeared to be a genuine effort to utilize specialized skills within conventional military structures rather than simply recruiting back into special operations.
What would my official designation be? Maya asked.
Tactical Training Specialist, Colonel Chen replied. You'd hold regular enlisted rank but, with additional authority for advanced training programs. Your previous experience would be acknowledged within appropriate classification levels, but your day-to-day role would be conventional military service with specialized responsibilities. The opportunity was appealing. It would allow her to contribute her expertise while building the conventional military career she desired.
But one concern remained paramount. What about operational security regarding my previous assignments? Maya asked.
Colonel Chen nodded approvingly. Appropriate precautions would be maintained. Your general experience level would be acknowledged for training purposes, but specific operational details would remain classified. You'd be identified as someone with advanced tactical training and field experience, not as a former Silent Echo agent. Captain Rodriguez added, from a practical standpoint, your fellow recruits already know you have significant experience.
This program would provide a framework for utilizing that experience without compromising security. Maya considered the proposal carefully. It represented a middle path between complete anonymity and full exposure of her background. She could contribute her skills while still pursuing the conventional military career she had chosen. I'm interested, Maya said. But I'd like to complete basic training with my current company first. Colonel Chen smiled. That's exactly what we were hoping you'd say.
Your integration with this training company could serve as a pilot program for how tactical specialists operate within conventional units.
Over the following weeks, Maya's role within the training company evolved organically.
She continued participating in all standard training requirements, but she also began providing advanced instruction in areas where her experience was relevant.
Tactical movement, threat assessment, operational planning, skills that elevated the entire company's performance.
The change in her relationships with fellow recruits was dramatic. Jessica Chen, who had been her primary tormentor, became one of her most dedicated students. During a particularly challenging tactical exercise, Jessica approached Maya with genuine humility.
Rodriguez, I owe you more than just an apology, Jessica said.
I was completely wrong about you, and my behavior was inexcusable regardless of what I thought your background was. Maya appreciated the acknowledgement, but she was more interested in moving forward than dwelling on past conflicts. What matters now is that we're all working together to become better soldiers. Marcus Thompson had undergone perhaps the most significant transformation. His previous mockery had been replaced by genuine respect and eagerness to learn from Maya's experience. During one training session, he pulled her aside with a serious question.
Maya, can I ask you something personal?
Marcus said, using her first name for the first time since they'd met.
Maya nodded, curious about his question. Those scars on your arms, are they really from the operations you were involved in? Maya considered how to answer honestly while respecting security requirements.
Some of them are from operational situations.
Others are from the circumstances that led me to that kind of work.
All of them are reminders that survival sometimes requires enduring things most people never face.
Marcus nodded thoughtfully. I can't imagine what you've been through.
But I want you to know that I understand now why you couldn't explain your background before. The conversation represented a fundamental shift in how her fellow recruits viewed both her scars and her reluctance to discuss her past. What had previously been seen as secretiveness or criminality was now understood as operational security and appropriate discretion.
Maya's tactical instruction sessions became highlights of the training schedule.
She taught advanced techniques that wouldn't normally be covered until much later in military careers, if at all.
Room clearing procedures developed through actual urban operations.
Communication methods tested in hostile environments.
Tactical decision-making frameworks proven in life-or-death situations.
During one memorable session, Maya was teaching advanced reconnaissance techniques when David Kumar asked a question that revealed how much the company's understanding had evolved. "Instructor Rodriguez," David said, using the informal title the recruits had adopted for her, "when you were conducting these types of operations, how did you deal with the psychological pressure?" It was a sophisticated question that demonstrated genuine understanding of the mental challenges involved in high-stakes tactical operations. Maya appreciated both the insight behind the question and the respect implied by the phrasing.
"The psychological aspect is often more challenging than the physical demands," Maya replied.
"You learn to compartmentalize, to focus on the immediate tactical requirements while processing emotional responses later in a safe environment."
She paused, considering how much personal detail to share. "You also learn that your team becomes everything.
Trust in your teammates, clear communication, and shared commitment to the mission, these become your psychological foundation when everything else is chaos." The training session continued with practical exercises, but Maya noticed that the recruits were applying not just the tactical techniques she taught, but also the psychological approaches to high-pressure situations. They were becoming more than just technically competent, they were developing the mental resilience that characterized effective soldiers. As the final weeks of basic training approached, Maya found herself reflecting on the unexpected path her military career had taken. Her goal had been anonymity and conventional service, but circumstances had led her to a role that honored both her previous experience and her current objectives. The culminating exercise for their training company was a complex, multi-day field operation that would test everything they had learned over the previous months. Maya would participate as both a recruit completing her own requirements and as a tactical advisor helping to plan and execute the operation. The night before the exercise began, Sergeant Williams called Maya aside for a private conversation. "Rodriguez, in 15 years as a drill instructor, I've never had a recruit like you," Williams said. "Your technical skills are obvious, but what's more impressive is how you've influenced this entire company's development." Maya appreciated the recognition, but she was curious about his assessment of the broader implications. "These recruits aren't just more technically proficient than typical basic training graduates," Williams continued. "They think differently about tactical problems, they work together more effectively, and they approach challenges with a level of mental resilience I've rarely seen." He paused, studying Maya's face. "Whatever you experienced in your previous career, you found a way to pass on the valuable lessons without passing on the trauma. That's a rare skill." Maya nodded, understanding his point. Teaching tactical skills was straightforward, sharing the psychological lessons of high-stakes operations without creating artificial stress was much more challenging. "What you've accomplished here," Williams concluded, "is going to change how we think about tactical training integration. This pilot program is going to be expanded based on the results you've achieved." The final exercise began at dawn with a complex operational scenario involving multiple objectives, unknown variables, and time pressure designed to test decision-making under stress. Maya found herself in the unique position of participating as a recruit while also providing tactical guidance to the planning process. Her fellow recruits had been transformed over the course of their training. Jessica Chen moved with confidence and tactical awareness that would have been impossible months earlier. Marcus Thompson demonstrated leadership capabilities that incorporated both technical knowledge and operational psychology. David Kumar showed analytical skills that reflected deep understanding of tactical principles. As the exercise concluded successfully, Maya realized that her attempt to hide her background and pursue anonymous military service had instead led her to discover a new purpose. She had found a way to contribute her specialized experience to conventional military training in ways that enhanced overall capability without compromising operational security. Colonel Chen arrived for the graduation ceremony, bringing with her official documentation for Maya's new assignment as a tactical training specialist. The program had been approved for expansion based on the remarkable results achieved with Maya's training company. "Your fellow recruits," Colonel Chen told Maya privately, "scored higher on tactical assessments than any basic training company in the past 5 years. More importantly, their psychological resilience indicators suggest they're better prepared for the mental challenges of military service." Maya looked out at her fellow recruits, no longer tormentors or strangers, but soldiers she had helped train and who had taught her about the value of authentic service. Her scars were still visible, would always be visible, but they had become symbols of survival and expertise rather than sources of shame or speculation.
What's next, ma'am? Maya asked. Colonel Chen smiled.
Next, you help us figure out how to replicate what you've accomplished here across the entire army.
Your real mission is just beginning.
As Maya prepared to graduate from basic training and begin her new role as a tactical training specialist, she reflected on the unexpected journey that had brought her to this point. She had sought anonymity and found purpose. She had tried to hide her scars and discovered they could be sources of strength rather than shame. She had attempted to escape her past and instead found a way to use her experience to build a better future for other soldiers. The whispered comments and cruel assumptions of her fellow recruits seemed like ancient history now. What remained were the tactical skills they had developed together, the mutual respect they had earned, and the understanding that true strength often came from surviving experiences others couldn't imagine. Maya Rodriguez had found her place in the conventional military not despite her extraordinary background, but because of how she chose to use it in service of others.